Moscow, 2138. With the world only beginning to recover from the complete socialite collapse of the late 21st century, Zoya scrapes by, prepping corpses for funerals, and dreams of saving enough money to have a child, when her brother forces her to bring him a mysterious package. She witnesses his murder and finds herself on the run from ruthless mobsters, frantically trying to stay alive and save her loved ones. Zoya opens the package and discovers two unusual data cards. One that allows her to fight back against the mafia, and another which may hold the key to everlasting life. The Immortality Game. Written by Ted Cross. Narrated by Sam Atlas. Hello, and welcome back to another audiobook review. And this is not just my first review of the year, but this is also my very first video of 2022. And I have a proud announcement that we have finally hit 60 subscribers. So be sure to stay tuned to the end of the video where I will give away a free digital code for a movie. But today I'm reviewing the cyberpunk story of The Immortality Game, written by Ted Cross. So let's just dive right into the review. So starting with the cover and title. For this section, I'm going to give this 5 stars. I do have a slight issue with the cover and with the name, but they're so minuscule that I didn't feel the need to really deduct points here. Now, the problem I have with the cover is, while it is a beautiful sci-fi picture, this story was proposed to me as a cyberpunk story, which I'll dive more into that issue later. But since I'm going to be deducting points later in that section, I didn't feel the need to take away from it here. The picture is beautiful. It is really nice, and it does set a sci-fi theme. But notice I said sci-fi theme. So it doesn't really tell me anything about the story or make me want to know anything about the story. I feel it's very slightly misleading. As for the title, because of the name, The Immortality Game, I do have to say, using the word immortality first is what makes this title very searchable on Amazon. When I was looking it up to review this book, the fact I entered immortality first, as soon as I hit the G for game, this was the one and only title that popped up. However, I do feel that the word game is used a little too often nowadays. But since this was the first thing and only thing to pop up, I didn't feel the need to take away points, which is why I'm giving this section 5 points. These might just be very, very minor nitpicks on my part, but I've seen a lot of stories and stuff with game in the title. And the picture is just very generic of a sci-fi. It doesn't really broadcast what the story you're in for is. Now moving into the writing. And for the writing, I'm going to give this section 5 stars. There, again, is a little minor nitpick, but it's something that I'm taking points away for later. So I didn't feel the need to take away those points here. As I've said in previous videos, I mainly only take away points in the writing section if the grammar is really, really bad, or if there are certain words used way too many times that maybe you should have thought of something else because I got tired of hearing the word by the end. But that wasn't the case here. All in all, the writing was really good. The story flowed perfectly. So, as I said, this section, it gets 5 stars. Now we're going to move into the narration. And for the narration, I'm going to give this story 3 stars. So, the reason I'm giving it 3 stars is while the narrator does do a very good job at reading the book, it's very crisp and clear. You understand everything that's said. Reading from the point of view of the narrator, there was like zero emotion in it. It just felt really droll and dry, I guess is the best way I can explain it. There was a great deal of effort, I felt, put into the voices of the characters. In fact, I think the narrator did a great job at voicing the characters. And while this story is kind of dialogue heavy, the times when it was just the narrator talking and just the narrator explaining the story, I was really starting to hope that, someone was going to say something so he would switch his voice a little bit. This, like I said, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. I just felt like there was more emotion that could have been put into the actual narration. Not a ton, just a little bit, And that, to me, was really the biggest drawback of this as an audiobook. Now, as a physical copy for those people who can read really well and read really fast or just read really good, that isn't going to be an issue. But when you're listening to the audiobook, I feel like, at least for me, that was an issue. Now moving into the story. And for the story, I'm going to give this book 4 stars. Now, the reason I'm giving it 4 stars is, first and foremost, these, again, are minor nitpicks of my own opinion, but I feel like there was a couple avenues. And one of these I'm going to save for another section. But the first thing is that to me this felt like this was 2 different stories kind of melded into one story, which normally I'm okay with. That's fine. But some of the beats were just a little too repetitive. And it's like, okay, I've heard this before. I know the story. I've seen it in a movie. There was also, I think, a good bit of the story that was missing. At the very beginning of the book, things happened just a little too quickly, and I feel like the writer should have taken maybe a little bit more time, being this was a standalone book, which normally when it comes to standalone books, I feel if you're a writer and you're making a standalone book, push that book to the limit. Make it as long as you can. Really dive into things, your characters and whatnot, because yes, this story does have basically an end, and there's really no reason for it to continue on. And I feel like, at the beginning, things were so rushed, so quickly put into motion, that the writer would have benefited maybe just pulling back and making the front part of the book a little bit longer, giving us a chance to get into this world, which is going to bring me into characters now. And for characters, I'm also going to give it 4 stars. Basically, for the same reason. It really needed work with the characters at the beginning. You had these characters, and you kind of just threw them into the situation really quickly. Within like the first 3 chapters, the main part of the story is moving along. And I felt like the main girl could have gotten more time. We could have gotten some more time in the main guy's life, setting up for things he's going to do and say later, maybe give us an idea of what his idea of the perfect woman is. That way, when he comes across this girl and he's so, love at first sight, head over heels for her, that it makes sense. Oh my God, this is like the woman he's been dreaming of. You know, we could have gotten more in her life where we see her working a couple days in her job, where her brother has tried to reach out to her and missed her by seconds, where we meet the mother and friends who later on we do meet them, but it's either very short or so rushed, and it's like, I think the writer needed to introduce these characters a little bit better. He just needed to give us a chance to know who these characters are and what their relationship to the main character was and how they feel about him. I think don't get me wrong, some of these characters are done really well. Some of the villains, you get very good, clear aspirations as to what they want and what they're trying to do. Even though you don't spend a lot of time with them either. Sometimes you spend a little too much time with them rather than the heroes. And I can get that. I understand. I've always been the person, sometimes the villain's journey is more interesting. But in this opinion of mine, I just feel like the main characters, you could have made your book longer by just focusing on them a little bit more, gathering up a little bit of characteristics from an extra 2 or 3 chapters at the beginning without it getting too boring, And at the same time, you could have set up, like, for instance, the brother character, like in the very first chapter. I'm a big fan, or advocate, I should say, of, not starting with your main character. Maybe that's taboo of me to say, but at least in the first book, if you're writing a franchise, or maybe in the first chapter, I don't feel you necessarily have to start with your main character. Because if you look at most great movies and stuff, not all the time do they start off with the main character. There are probably a lot that do, but a good portion of movies actually start off with either the villain or a side character. I could probably give 100 examples, but even in my own book, I didn't start off with my main character. I started off with the inciting incident. And a lot of people have tried to tell me, well, you should have done that as a prologue. And it's like, no, I shouldn't, because that incident happens literally a day or 2 before the main character's, brought in. So I just feel like we needed more character from these characters. And that is why I gave this one 4 stars as well. As for extras, well, there really wasn't any extras in this book. I felt like maybe, possibly, there could have it could have maybe benefited from that. Maybe it's in the paperback or ebook version. I definitely feel like if the author, and I say this a lot because I notice a lot of the authors that I review don't yet have hardback copies. I feel like this could be addressed in a hardback issue. I mean, as most self-published authors should know, you can always add to or change your work. You know, you can make other editions. And if they're going to make, let's say, a hardback one day, the hardback can be an extended edition that has an extra few chapters. Just an idea to any self-published authors out there. So, moving into the final score. So, my final score for the Immortality game. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Like I said, the story was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. The characters, once I got to know them, once they got rolling, and I understood what was going on with them, I actually enjoyed it. There was that one thing with the main boy who was head over heels for the girl, and I understand it. It's just been done to death in movies, you know. And it's never usually done in such a way that it's like, okay, seriously, why? I mean, I don't get it. Because, like, this dude's, like, facing absolute danger, and he doesn't have to. He can walk away any point in time and say, nope, I'm done. Bye. You want to go on a revenge trick, that's your thing, but, you know, he didn't do that. And if we had a little more setup with him where we learn why he's not that way, then I think it would actually have played better in the long run. So I'm getting, like I said, 8 out of 10. I did enjoy it. I don't really see this having any room for something beyond this. I would definitely be willing to check out any future work by this author if he wanted me to do a review on something else. I mean, I'd be more than happy to check out future work. The narrator, Sam Atlas. First off, I just want to say the name Sam Atlas for a sci-fi book is pretty good. I mean, it's almost like meant to be. I don't know if that was a thing he did on purpose, like if he legally changed his name or he's using a pseudonym, but that name is almost perfect for a sci-fi narrator. And I think if he just had put a little bit more emotion into his reading of it, I think that would have made the book very strong. But it didn't. And it was actually getting to a point at some points where I was like, I'm getting tired of the regular narration. Can we just hurry it along? Like I said, the best part was when he was reading the characters and when he was doing their voices. He did amazing at that. You know, he reminded me several times of Metal Gear Solid Snake. And it was just like, wow, he sounds almost like him perfectly. But then a couple chapters later, he's voicing another character who's a totally different character, and it sounds like he's using the same Solid Snake voice. So there was there's definitely emotion when he was reading those lines, and you got the correct emotional response to the situation. I just felt like the biggest drawback was the narrator narrating it himself. There wasn't emotion. I mean, even in me talking in this review, there is emotion in my voice. I'm talking to you with passion, but I'm not doing it overly. So that was my review of the Immortality game. I do want to say, if you have not checked out this book yet, and you are a fan of sci-fi, and yeah, I would maybe go with light cyberpunk, very light. This really didn't have a whole lot. This really did not have a whole lot that gave me that cyberpunk feel. There was a few bits, but for the most part, it was almost like you could take out some of this sci-fi cyberpunk elements, like putting chips into parts of their bodies. You could almost remove those completely, change up the story a little, and it would still work. You know? And that, again, goes back to why I gave the story the score I did. So I want to thank you so much for joining me on my first review back, on my first review and video of 2022. I am so excited to be kicking off this year, and especially with such great news. This channel has finally hit 60 subscribers. So as I do every time I reach a new set of 10, I want to give to you a free digital code, as you can see on screen. This code is first come, first serve. If the code has already been used by this point of you watching this video, please help share the channel. Every time I get up to a new set of 10, so when I reach 70, I'll be doing this again. I'll be putting another video out, and that video will contain a code inside it. And all you have to do is, like I say at the end of every video, please like, comment, share, subscribe. Make sure to click that notification bell. And I will talk to you all next time.